Ever since I was a child, I was drawn to the mysterious, the unexplained. It wasn't just a passing curiosity, it was an unshakable fascination that grew with me. I devoured books on the paranormal, listened intently to ghost stories my parents told, and hung on to every chilling word shared around campfires. But I never thought, not even once, that I would experience something beyond the veil myself. That belief changed one fateful night when I was 11 years old. Our family lived in an old craftsman-style home in the Brookside neighborhood of Kansas City, Missouri. The house had stood for decades, its wooden floors whispering with every step, its walls thick with the echoes of time. The neighborhood itself was quiet and charming, with tree-lined streets and houses that seemed to carry the weight of many lifetimes. I had always felt safe there, until that night. It was a Saturday evening, the kind of night where nothing out of the ordinary was expected. After dinner, my family gathered in the living room, immersed in an intense game of Monopoly. Laughter and friendly banter filled the air as we tried to out-strategize one another. Eventually, as the night wore on, my younger sister and I were sent off to bed. We shared a room upstairs, and as usual, we lay in our beds talking in hushed voices before sleep took us. The room was dimly lit by the moon, which cast silver beams through the window, painting soft patterns on the walls. The air was still, heavy with the quiet of the night. I was mid-sentence when I noticed it, a shift, a disturbance in the darkness just beyond the foot of my bed. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then, before my very eyes, a mist began to take form. It started as a faint wisp, curling and twisting in the air, almost translucent. But within moments, it solidified into something more, into someone. A head. A face. It hovered, suspended in the dark, its features growing clearer with each passing second. The figure had a narrow nose, a high forehead, and piercing eyes that seemed to lock onto mine. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Not yet. My curiosity overpowered my fear. I watched as the figure's mouth moved, forming words, though no sound reached my ears. It was speaking to me. Communicating. But what was it saying? I needed confirmation that I wasn't imagining things. Keeping my voice steady, I turned to my sister. "Do you see that?" I asked, barely above a whisper. She opened her eyes, followed my gaze, and then she screamed. The sound shattered the silence, sending a jolt of fear through me. Suddenly, the realization hit me like a crashing wave. This wasn't a trick of the light. This wasn't my imagination. This was real. My scream joined hers, and within seconds footsteps thundered up the stairs. My father and older brother burst into the room, their faces etched with concern. "What's going on?" my father demanded, flipping on the light, and just like that, the apparition vanished. The room was empty. Just two terrified girls and a father who had no patience for ghost stories. We stumbled through an explanation, describing what we had seen in breathless fragments. My father listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he left the room and returned moments later with an old photo album I had never seen before. "Look through this," he said, his voice quieter now. "Tell me if you recognize anyone." I hesitated, flipping through the pages, scanning faces of unfamiliar relatives. And then my fingers stopped. My breath caught in my throat. "It's him," I whispered, pointing to the man in the photograph. My father's face paled. "That's my father," he said. "He died in 1950. You never met him." The room grew eerily silent. I had no explanation. None of us did. All I knew was that the face I had seen floating at the foot of my bed, the face that had tried to speak to me, belonged to a man who had been dead for over a decade before I was even born. That night changed everything. It was my initiation into the world beyond, a world I had only read about in books and whispered about in the dark. From that moment on, I would never doubt the existence of spirits again, and that was only the beginning. Over the years, I encountered more unexplained phenomena. Shadows that moved when no one was there. Whispers in the dead of night. The sensation of being watched, even when I was alone. Some spirits seemed benign, others less so. But none were ever as clear, as undeniable as that first encounter with my grandfather. Perhaps he had come to watch over me. Perhaps he had tried to tell me something important. Or maybe, just maybe, he was simply reminding me that even in death, family never truly leaves us. To this day, I still wonder what he was trying to say.